America's first fortune was built on opium smokers in Qing Dynasty China. What if you were told that the United States earned its first major fortune from opium smokers in late Qing Dynasty China? Would you believe it? After gaining independence, the U.S. began continuously selling opium to China, reaping enormous profits that laid the financial foundation for the nation's early development and industrial growth. Today, let's explore how America sold opium to China, which families grew rich from it, and how that money was invested back into the United States. Poverty after independence and a way out. On September 3, 1783, the United States reached a historic moment. In Paris, representatives of the 13 original states signed the Treaty of Paris with Britain, formally marking U.S. independence. The new nation was poor, only 2.5 million people, 20% of whom were enslaved, with almost no industry and limited farmland, much like China in its early years after 1949. Most Americans were immigrants from Europe, many with experience in maritime trade. They knew trade could bring wealth, so they looked to the seas. But having just fought Britain and France, they faced trade blockades from these powers. Turning to China, they realized Americans could sell ginseng, minerals, and silver to China in exchange for silk, tea, and porcelain, a perfect trade loop. The first to try was Robert Morris, a founder of the U.S. financial system and a figure second only to George Washington in influence. Washington once asked him to be Secretary of the Treasury, but Morris declined, preferring business over politics. On February 22, 1784, Morris sent the ship Empress of China from New York to Guangzhou, loaded with ginseng, lead, and furs. The voyage crossed the Atlantic, rounded the Cape of Good Hope, and entered the South China Sea. When the ship arrived in Guangzhou, locals were accustomed to British and French vessels, but this was the first time they saw the American flag. The Americans sold their goods, bought Chinese tea and silk, and returned to New York in May 1785, selling everything for a large profit. Morris made over $30,000, a fortune at the time. Encouraged, American merchants began traveling to China regularly. Soon, however, they discovered a faster way to make money, the opium trade. American opium dealers, a ruthless startup. Before 1840, the British monopolized China's opium market, growing poppies in India and selling them in China for enormous profits. Americans soon followed. A key figure was Samuel Russell, an orphan from Connecticut who started as a trader with a firm doing business in China. He realized that opium bought in Turkey for $2.5 per pound could be sold in Guangzhou for $10, an irresistible profit. In 1819, at age 30, Russell was sent to Guangzhou, but the British held the market tightly, leaving Americans only scraps. Determined to succeed, Russell went independent. In 1824, he founded Russell & Company in Guangzhou, dealing in opium, tea, and silk. Still, business was difficult under British pressure and Qing bans on opium. Russell then partnered with the influential American merchant Perkins & Company, run by John Perkins Cushing, who had arrived in Guangzhou in 1803 at age 16. Cushing knew important figures, including Haokua, Wu Bianjian, then the world's wealthiest man. Haokua controlled Guangzhou's foreign trade channels. At his peak, he was worth about 26 million silver dollars, more than the indemnity the Qing later paid Britain after the First Opium War. With Haokua's backing, Russell's opium flowed smoothly into China. In 1827, Cushing closed his own company and joined Russell & Company full-time. Unequal treaties bring sudden wealth. By the mid-19th century, Western powers were flooding China with opium, harming public health and draining Qing silver reserves. Official Lin Zexu appealed to the emperor to ban opium, leading to the famous destruction of opium stocks in Humen in 1839. This struck a blow to British opium trade and helped trigger the First Opium War. After the Qing defeat, Britain forced the Treaty of Nanjing, legalizing British opium sales in China. Seeing an opportunity, the U.S. sent Cushing to negotiate a similar treaty. Using Britain's victory as leverage, Cushing secured the Treaty of Wanghia in 1844, granting Americans the same rights to sell opium in China. American opium dealers entered a golden age. Russell & Company attracted partners like Warren Delano Jr., John Morris Forbes, and others seeking instant wealth. After the First Opium War, American opium accounted for 1/3 of China's opium imports. While exact profits aren't recorded, the scale was staggering. John Jacob Astor, America's first millionaire, built his fortune partly on the China opium trade. When he died, his wealth was around $20 million, while the average American earns $700 a year. Another partner, Warren Delano, after decades in the opium trade, left his children nearly $10 million, equivalent to about $500 billion today. Opium money fuels American industry. From 1818 to 1891, Russell & Company created many American tycoons.
After making fortunes from Chinese opium smokers, these men invested heavily in U.S. infrastructure. Russell donated to build much of Yale University's campus and helped found the Skull and Bones Society. Delano started a coal mining company that dominated the industry, providing energy for America's industrialization. His granddaughter later married James Roosevelt, and their son became President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Forbes founded the Michigan Central Railroad, dominating U.S. railway construction. Partner Abiel Abbott Lowe started a clipper ship fleet for maritime trade and invested in American mining. In short, these 19th century American opium traders, enriched by Chinese smokers, not only grew rich themselves, but also helped fund the U.S. industrial transformation, paving the way for America to surpass Britain and become a global power.